to YouTube. And there we are, live streaming on YouTube. Susan Michelle, this mic is all yours.
Hi, this is Susan Michel. I am here in Western Massachusetts. It is great to be here as always. I am the author of Surrender to Joy from Suicide to Serenity. I teach the transformational truth of A Course in Miracles, which we are all here to study, to learn, to embody the knowledge of. And I can honestly say, after 35 years of studying this text, I continue to vacillate in this earthly classroom when I can embody the principles of A Course in Miracles. I feel the peace, love, joy, and happiness of God, which is the truth of who I am. And when I do not embody these principles that all involve love, I do not feel so great. I will start, I think, reciting the introduction of my book, Surrender to Joy. And what I write is my passion is God. God is love and joy and beauty. He is all that is good in the world. Everything else is our own miscreation. When we are filled with joy, we are connected to God. When we are not joyful, we have lost our connection to all that is real. This is my message. It can be clarified with three simple words: surrender to joy. There is nothing to find. All we need to do is surrender. There is nothing to find in the world because there is no world. The external world that we experience is nothing more than a reflection of an internal condition. So we are always creating our own experiences in life. You know, we are the projector, and the life that we experience is a reflection of our inner thoughts. A Course in Miracles tells us that all thought creates form on some level. So when we are connected to the truth of who we are, our only desire is to extend God's love to our brother. When we are disconnected, life becomes a lesson, and our lesson is always learning to love more unconditionally. So today, I think I will start with the seventh miracle in chapter number 1, the principles of miracles. The seventh miracle states, miracles, the seventh miracle states, miracles are everyone's right, but purification is necessary first. That's what the seventh miracle states. Actually, I think I'm going to even take it back a little bit. I'm going to start with a complete reading of the introduction of A Course in Miracles. And I've read this numerous times, as have all Course in Miracles students / teachers. But it's really amazing what the introduction of A Course in Miracles states. It's one thing to understand it, it's another thing to really embody it. So what it says right here in the introduction is, this is a Course in Miracles. It is a required course. Only the time you take It is voluntary. Free will does not mean that you can establish the curriculum. It means only that you can elect what you want to take at a given time. Like the way I see it, we are all on this earthly plane to learn lessons. So this world is a classroom, and A Course in Miracles was written, channeled through Helen Schuckman by the Spirit of Jesus Christ. I mean, this is kind of a roadmap, a GPS. This is helping us save time, because for our reason for being here in this earthly classroom is to make it home to heaven. It's to learn to overcome the darkness and to love unconditionally. So the Course in Miracles is a roadmap. It's telling us how to reach that state of enlightenment that we all deep down desire so profoundly, and this is what we crave. This is what our soul craves. Our soul craves to reconnect to God. Our soul craves just complete peace. So A Course in Miracles is telling us how to experience that deep peace, that state of enlightenment that we are all craving. So then it writes here in the introduction, the Course does not aim at teaching the meaning of love, for that is beyond what can be taught. It does aim, however, at removing the blocks to the awareness of love's presence, which is your natural inheritance. I mean, that line is one of my favorite lines in the whole book, because what A Course in Miracles is teaching us to do is to identify the blocks to the awareness of love's presence. And once we can identify them, we can choose to release them. If we can't identify them, then we just kind of play them out. We just kind of act them out. When we can't identify the blocks, we kind of become the blocks. We become the insecurities. We become the darkness. We become the devil. But once we can identify our blocks, which are just our insecurities, then we can choose to take responsibility for them and release them. So it does aim, however, at removing the blocks to the awareness of love's presence, which is your natural inheritance. The opposite of love is fear, but what is all encompassing can have no opposite. This course can therefore be summed up very simply in this way. Nothing real can be threatened, nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. This course is a course teaching the meaning of non-duality. Non-duality means that only the love is real. Everything else, all the darkness, all the egoic tactics, all the circumstances that happen that are not based on love, all the circumstances that happen that are fear-based are an illusion. They're not really happening. But A Course in Miracles is teaching us how to love unconditionally on a consistent basis, because God's will for me is perfect happiness. And the only way I can live the life that God wills for me is to extend his love on a regular basis. And now I will go to where I started with number 7 in miracles, the seventh miracle in chapter 1 reads, here it is, the chapter 1, the meaning of miracles, principles of miracles. So the seventh principle of miracle is miracles are everyone's right, but purification is necessary first. So in order to become a miracle worker and extend God's love to our brother, which is the only thing that will ever make us happy, we need to purify our mind. We need to release the blocks. We need to bring the unconscious wounds to the surface so we can see them and release them to the hands of God, so he can take them from us. And this is really what I have spent my whole life trying to do. Because again, God's will for me is perfect happiness. God's will for all of us is perfect happiness. When we are not experiencing the peace, love, joy, and happiness of God, we are not in our right mind. But in order to consistently connect to the power of unconditional love, we need to release the blocks, release the wounds in our unconscious mind, and bring the unconscious blocks, the unconscious wounds to the surface so we can clear our channel. Here, I have a paragraph that I think I will read from The Untethered Soul, and this is by Michael Singer. And I used to read this paragraph very frequently because I think it's very impactful. It's very meaningful. What Michael Singer writes in his book, The Untethered Soul. This is kind of, where is this? This is in chapter number 11. And the title of this chapter is Paying the Price of Freedom. And what he writes, and I think this is really what triggers are all about. This is what suffering is all about. This is what bringing the darkness to the light is all about. He writes, sometimes you will go through deep experiences that bring up intense pain inside of you. If it is in there, it is going to come up. If you have any wisdom, you will leave it alone and not try to change your life to avoid it. You will just relax and give it the space it needs to release and burn through you. You do not want this stuff inside your heart. I mean, that's what I think happens to so many of us. We have these old pain points that we carry around with us. And because we're so afraid to step into that pain, we project it, or we play the role of the victim. But in order to dissolve it and in order to clear our channel, we need to allow ourselves to feel the pain fully, because once we can do that, we will be able to release it and get to the other side of it. Michael Singer writes, to feel great love and freedom, to find the presence of God within you, all of this stored pain must go. It is in this inner work that spirituality becomes a reality. Spiritual growth exists in that moment when you are consciously willing to pay the price of freedom. You must be willing at all times, in all circumstances, to remain conscious in the face of pain and to work with your heart by relaxing and remaining open. I think that's very difficult to do because so many times when we feel attacked, when we feel demeaned, when we feel unfairly treated, we want to protect ourselves. How do we protect ourselves? We shut down, we lash out, we judge. I think that's one way that we can protect ourselves, by judging other people and trying to remain superior in our mind to the person that we're judging. They're all different protective measures that we can take. But what Michael Singer is suggesting that we do is, if we feel pain in our heart, don't try to protect yourself in any way. Just keep your heart open, allow yourself to feel whatever it is that is being triggered. Like some old pain point is probably coming up for healing purposes. So just own the pain, and by owning the pain, we will release the pain. That is what Michael Singer in his book is suggesting that we do. And I think that is what I've spent the, the large majority of my adult life trying to do. Sometimes I get it right, sometimes I don't. I'm a work in progress, like the rest of the world. And then I started Googling and trying to find similar quotes and similar suggestions. And a quote from Carl Jung came up. Well, Carl Jung is a famous psychologist. One of his famous quotes is, "What you resist persists," which is a way of saying just open yourself up to feel whatever it is that is presenting itself to you. And what came up on Google is a quote from Jung: "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." So, really, we are never, ever a victim of circumstances, because we are creating the circumstances that we experience all of the time. We either create consciously, or most of the time, what's going on is we are creating circumstances unconsciously. So once we can bring the unconscious to the light, this is how we can really start to make changes in our lives. And then questions that people have about Jung's statement are: how does one make the unconscious conscious? How do we do that? I think it's just to slow down, to be aware, to pay attention to our feelings, to be fully present in each and every moment. I think on our last discussion here on Pal Talk YouTube, we were speaking about all the distractions that come up all of the time. People are on their cell phones all of the time. People are busy all of the time. So they're not really aware of exactly, how they're feeling. I think one thing we can do to make the unconscious conscious is to slow down, to sit with the feelings that we're having. It's just so important to be aware of how we are feeling. I mean, I think this is how we have intimate relationships with other people, but it's also how we have an intimate relationship with God and with ourselves. It's by slowing down and being fully present. And that's challenging. And that is the path of all spiritual seekers, to slow down and to be fully present with whatever we are feeling at the time. So, ACIM, it's a spiritual text, and it's teaching us how to fully connect with God, but it's also a psychotherapy. It's teaching us to understand and release the dynamics of the ego. It's really about understanding and releasing all feelings and emotions that are not based on love. So I think what is extremely important in order to grow and to blossom into the beings that we were meant to be, to live up to our potential in this lifetime, is to take complete responsibility for our life and stop blaming. It's not about blaming other people. It's not about blaming outside circumstances. It's not about blaming ourselves. That's actually something else that we have a tendency to do when the ego is in control. It's whether we're blaming other people, or we're blaming outside circumstances, or we're blaming ourselves. We're still not in our right mind. We're still under the control of the ego. So what's really important to do is to take responsibility for our life and accept everything in our life exactly as it is. And then I think what happens is, as we become stronger, as we learn how to keep ourselves plugged into our God socket more consistently, you know, triggers will appear. But I think triggers appear in our lives when we are ready to heal them, when we are strong enough to face what's in our unconscious mind. They get reflected back to us for healing purposes. There is this quote that I pulled out before my talk today, and this is from A Course in Miracles, lesson 135. This says, it's a little bookmark here that I think I got at a Course in Miracles convention from Jennifer Hadley. And what it says is, what could you not accept if you but knew that everything that happens, all events, past, present, and to come, are gently planned by one whose only purpose is your good. And this is from A Course in Miracles, lesson 135. So everything that happens, whether it is enjoyable or challenging, happens for our good. The blessings are right. Our blessings are God's will for us. God's will for me is perfect happiness. God's will for all of us is perfect happiness. But even the challenging times are there to teach us. The challenging times, I believe, are there to show us something in our unconscious mind that needs healing. And once we can look at it, take responsibility for it, own it, and release it, that is how healing occurs. So it's all coming together and it's all good. I mean, life is planned out for healing purposes. And it's just so important to accept everything in our life exactly as it is. I have my favorite paragraph from A Course in Miracles highlighted and underlined, and I read it just about every week. But what Jesus writes in chapter number 1, The Meaning of Miracles, about the escape from darkness. He writes, the escape from darkness involves 2 stages. First, the recognition that darkness cannot hide. This step usually entails fear. Second, the recognition that there is nothing you want to hide, even if you could. This step brings escape from fear. When you have become willing to hide nothing, you will not only be willing to enter into communion, but will also understand peace and joy. So God really is requesting here that we remain transparent. We're transparent, we're honest, and I think to allow God to heal our hearts, we need to be honest about our shortcomings. We need to be honest about our insecurities. We need to allow ourselves to be vulnerable, and we need to allow ourselves to trust God totally. Because I think what happens is so many of us try to appear together on the outside all of the time. We don't want other people to see our imperfections. We don't want other people to see our insecurities. We don't want other people to see our humanity. And because the mind is all encompassing, we also keep these dark places from God. We won't allow our shortcomings to expose themselves. And if we don't allow our insecurities to expose themselves, there's no way that we will heal. This is it's just very important to allow the darkness in our unconscious minds to be exposed, because this is how healing occurs. And I've seen this happen time and time again in my own life. And it's not about blame, it's not about judgment. I know when I have friends and they don't open their hearts and let me in, I don't feel connected to them. I just don't feel true intimacy. I just don't feel empowered. I don't feel alive. I feel disconnected. And that's what God wants from us because, the same way that we establish our connection with God, that's the same way we're able to be intimate with our brothers, with our romantic partner, with our friends. We need to allow ourselves to be vulnerable. We need to allow the darkness to come to the light so healing can occur. I have a friend right now who I feel disconnected from because I feel like in many ways she's shutting me out. And I know it's not a reflection on me. I know she's going through some challenging times. But when she shuts me out and she doesn't allow me to see her vulnerabilities, I I kind of feel rejected. Now, I don't think God actually feels rejected because God is just unconditional love. So I don't think he's capable of feeling rejected, but I do know when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable and we allow our shortcomings to come to the surface, that's how healing occurs. I know that for a fact. I guess, based on my own life experiences. Because when I allow myself to be vulnerable, when I allow my heart to open, when I allow myself to feel whatever is down there that needs to be felt, I feel so much peace, love, joy, and happiness on the other side. I mean, here, the last line of this paragraph, the escape from darkness says, when you have become willing to hide nothing, you will not only be willing to enter into communion, but will also understand peace and joy. And there's a difference too, because intellectually we can understand what peace and joy means. But in order to really embody the truth of who we are, we have to open ourselves up. We need to become willing to hide nothing, and that's to expose our weakness, to expose our vulnerability, to expose our darkness. And then on the other side of that, not only intellectually will we understand peace and joy, but we will emotionally embody that feeling of peace and joy. And I think that's what we all crave. That's what all spiritual seekers crave. That's what all people crave. People want to feel that peace and joy that comes with embodying the truth of who we are. Um, Triggers come up when they are ready to be healed. When we are strong enough to heal, life will present us with triggers because God's desire for us is healing. We are always being presented with opportunities to heal. So last Friday, after my talk here on Pal Talk YouTube, I was feeling pretty centered and strong and plugged into my God socket. So I had a little brand ambassador job at a liquor store for a company that I really enjoy working for. And I was just feeling very good. And I like talking to the consumers, and I like talking about my product, and I like talking to the other brand ambassador that was working across the aisle from me. And I was just feeling pretty centered, happy, joyful, connected to source. And then someone from the past who I have not fully forgiven came in the door. She was a supervisor at an old job, and her and I really clashed. I'm not saying it was her fault. I'm not saying it was my fault. God probably put us together for healing purposes. There was something in her that got triggered by me, so that's why I was in her life. There was something in me that got triggered by her. Am I saying this right? She triggered me, I triggered her. We were we were clashing on a pretty regular basis. And I hadn't seen her for quite some time, 9 months or so. I don't think I've seen her for at least 9 months. And she comes walking through the door of the liquor store, and we spoke, and we were both very nice to each other, and as a Course in Miracles student, I just kept praying for forgiveness. I really wanted to forgive her because I knew by holding a resentment towards her, I was keeping myself away from God. Whenever we have a resentment, whenever we have a grievance towards anyone, that is a block. That is somewhere in our mind where we are disconnecting ourselves from God. We are creating a cloud. If connecting to the light is our goal, our grievances are dark clouds, and they are blocking the light. So I am very aware of that. And when I was speaking to this woman, I just was praying for forgiveness. And I feel like I made some headway. I feel like I made some headway into forgiving her. It's just our grievances and our resentments. I think they're places where we feel hurt. And it's one thing to really try to forgive the people that hurt us, but I think we need help. We need help from the Holy Spirit. It happens, but we need to make an effort. And I think, I was feeling pretty empowered. I was feeling pretty joyful. God presented me with someone from my past who I have not fully forgiven. And he was giving me another opportunity to heal a past wound. And it's all good. It's all good. I mean, forgiveness is the most precious tool that we have here on this earthly plane to bring us closer to heaven. What is heaven? Heaven is a state of mind. Heaven is a place of peace, love, joy, and happiness. How do we get there? We get there through forgiveness. God does not need to forgive us because God has never condemned us. However, we need to forgive our brothers so we can feel God's forgiveness towards us. That is actually one of the principles of miracles, how forgiveness a way to connect to source energy. Forgiveness is a way to connect to the truth of who we are. Forgiveness is a way to connect to peace, love, joy, and happiness. Miracles are natural signs of forgiveness. Through miracles, you accept God's forgiveness by extending it to others. So when I forgive truly this person from my past, then I can feel God's love for me. I can feel the fact that God has never condemned me. I can feel my innocence. It's like I think by forgiving my brother, as I forgive people from the past, I can embody the essence of innocence. And by embodying the essence of innocence, I can remember how much I am loved. So forgiveness is the fastest way to connect to the truth of who we are. Now, this is not what the world teaches. The world teaches that when we forgive, we lose. The world teaches that when we forgive, we lose our power. That's from the ego. The ego wants us to hold on to unforgiveness. The ego wants us to hold on to resentment. The ego wants us to hold on to guilt. But A Course in Miracles is teaching us that through forgiveness, we feel our true strength. We feel our true power. What is our true strength? Love. Unconditional love is our true strength, and forgiveness goes hand in hand with unconditional love because forgiveness is of God. Forgiveness is our way out of the ego and into the arms of God, who loves us so completely and so unconditionally. But when we hold on to resentment, unforgiveness in any form, we are not able to feel how much God loves us. And we can't be a miracle worker, a true miracle worker, when we're holding on to guilt. So we need to forgive our brother, and we need to forgive ourselves. And by forgiving our brother, we are forgiving ourselves. Because God has but one son, and we are all part of that sonship. So by forgiving this supervisor from my past, I am forgiving myself. I mean, she hurt me in certain ways. I can remember that. And these were wounds in my unconscious mind that she brought to the surface, or that came to the surface because of my interaction with her. She can't bring them to the surface, but I guess these are wounds in my unconscious mind that came to the surface because of how I interacted with her. And by forgiving her, I'm releasing the pain, and I am taking a giant step towards heaven. So that was a beautiful thing. That was a beautiful interaction. And I thank God for giving me the opportunity to heal. As I just read, what could, and this is in so many situations, what could you not accept if you but knew that everything that happens are gently planned by one whose only purpose is your good? So we're always given opportunities to heal and to grow closer to the truth of who we are. So where we hold our resentments, we cannot see clearly. I was listening to a podcast today with one great teacher that actually I know, Lisa Natoli and Bill Free, two wonderful Course in Miracles students who are friends of ours, speak very, very highly about this particular teacher. And that's really what encouraged me, what prompted me to listen to his podcast, Rupert Spira. Rupert Spira, I know he's a very wise guru who talks about non-duality. And I was listening to him talk on this podcast, and he gave many lived examples that really made a lot of sense to me. He spoke about how we all are trying to get to know ourselves, because only by getting to know ourselves truly can we feel our connection with God and with the world. So there's a biblical quote, to know thyself is one of the most important thing, but definitely not in like an egocentric way, in a spiritual way, just to know that the essence of who we are is unconditional love. And then he gave the analogy of looking at white snow through an orange a sunglass with an orange tint to it. So the snow is pure white. But if we are wearing sunglasses with an orange tint, the snow is going to appear orange. If we are looking at the snow with a blue tint, the snow is going to appear blue. And I think this is true for so many things in life. We cannot see life clearly when we still have our own misperceptions, when we still have our own um our own negativity attached to it, but what is the Course in Miracles says, projection makes perception. So when we are projecting our own unhealed wounds onto a situation, we cannot see that situation clearly. So it's really important that we are looking at life from a clear perspective. That's what A Course in Miracles is teaching us to do, is to look at life from a loving perspective, so we can see the truth in circumstances, events, and people. So, and then another thing that Rupert Spira was talking about was how most of us start out in life by looking for their satisfaction in the world. I mean, most of us, when we're growing up, uh, our parents are teaching us to get educated, so we can go out into the world and get a good job and make money and meet the right partner. And I mean, this is just how everybody is raised in this world. Is we are taught from a very young age that if we do the right things, and we get the right things from the world, then we will experience happiness. But what happens to a lot of people is that they work diligently to create the life that they think is going to make them happy. And then they start realizing that the world has no potential to satisfy their heart's most the deepest yearnings of their heart. Like, the world can't satisfy us. What we're looking for is not of the world. What we're looking for is a connection with source energy. So once we realize that the world cannot satisfy us, then many people become spiritual seekers, and they start searching for enlightenment, And I think enlightenment is what we all crave. However, then they start being very disciplined and they start meditating and they start like searching spiritually. But I think what he was saying in this little podcast is it goes much deeper than that. It goes much deeper than that. It's definitely healthier, I believe, to search spiritually for the truth as opposed to looking for happiness in physical things. But then I think there comes a point when we need to just kind of let go and surrender to a higher will and allow God to guide us. And that's when we can really start slowing down and feeling the, I guess, just feeling the presence, feeling the presence of God. I mean, what we are searching for in the external world resides within us. So we think that we're searching for some kind of material thing in the external world. We find that isn't satisfying us. Then we think we are searching for some spiritual connection in the external world. And I guess we come to a point, when we are close to that state of enlightenment, when we realize that everything that we really desire has already been given to us. Everything that we think we're searching for externally exists within us. So God created us whole. God created us perfect. And there is no reason to search outside of ourselves for anything at all. Um, and this is what all enlightened masters seem to know. So I think to reach this state of enlightenment, all of our dark corners must be cleansed, and I think this is what happens to a lot of the great gurus. The Buddha, who I think is amazing, he undertook the journey involving facing the darkness of ignorance and delusion. I love how he is portrayed in statues and in pictures. He's portrayed as being a jolly soul with a big belly and a laughing smile, but he had to go through some cleansing in order to reach that state of enlightenment. And then Jesus, he spent 40 days in the wilderness after his baptism, where he was tempted by the devil and fasted, preparing for his ministry. I guess, the traditional Christian would call it the devil. A Course in Miracles would call it the ego. But he spent 40 days facing the darkness, before he entered into that place of enlightenment and was ready to teach the truth. So we all have to face our insecurities to see that they have no power over us. It's part of it's part of our purpose here in this earthly classroom, to face our insecurities, to see that they have no power over us. I know a couple of my close friends, I think I mentioned this earlier in my talk today, they are seeing themselves as victims of the world and I do my best to be empathetic, but I know deep in my heart and soul that we can never ever be victims of the world because we are creating the world that we experience. And here in A Course in Miracles, there is a really interesting paragraph in chapter 27. And Jesus writes about suffering, how we are the dreamer of the dream. Jesus writes, suffering is an emphasis upon all that the world has done to injure you. Here is the world's demented version of salvation clearly shown. Like to a dream of punishment, in which the dreamer is unconscious of what brought on the attack against himself, he sees himself attacked unjustly and by something not himself. He is the victim of this something else, a thing outside himself for which he has no reason to be held responsible. He must be innocent because he knows not what he does, but what is done to him. Yet his own attack upon himself apparent still, for it is he who bears the suffering, and he cannot escape because its source is seen outside himself. Now you are being shown you can escape. All that is needed is you look upon the problem as it is and not the way that you have set it up. So there is really never a problem. The problem is something in our own mind that we have not released, and this particular paragraph goes very well with the lesson of the day, because today is the 90th day of 2025. So we are on lesson 90. If you started the workbook on January 1st, and lesson 90 has two parts. First, it says, let me recognize the problem so it can be solved. And then it says, the first part of this is it goes back to review lesson 79. Lesson 79 says, let me recognize the problem so it can be solved. And then lesson 80 is the second review. And lesson 80 states, let me recognize my problems have been solved. So what Jesus is telling us is that there are no problems. We need to recognize the problem so it can be solved. But when we recognize the problem, the answer to the problem has already been given us. It says right here in the first sentence of this review, let me realize today that the problem is always some form of grievance that I would cherish. So the way out of the problems is forgiveness. Forgiveness is always the answer to every problem that has ever come up. And on that note, it is just about 4:00, and I will say thank you for being here with me today. I will end with the introduction of A Course in Miracles. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. Thank you. And I will return the microphone to Lynn.
Thank you so much, Susan.